Good morning. Welcome to Newswire Daily, your trusted window to global events. This week, major developments shaped two of the world's most volatile regions. In the Middle East, Israel and Hamas advanced through the early phases of a U.S.-brokered ceasefire, marking the first sustained pause in fighting after months of bloodshed. In Eastern Europe, Russia intensified its air campaign against Ukraine, targeting the capital Kyiv and the country's power grid. And in Oslo, the Nobel Committee's decision to honor Venezuelan opposition leader María Corina Machado sparked debate over the meaning of peace in an age of political unrest. We will begin with the first news. The parties have signed a ceasefire agreement in Gaza. After weeks of back-channel talks, representatives from Israel, Hamas, Egypt, Qatar, and the United States gathered in Cairo to formalize the first phase of the ceasefire accord. The signing ceremony marked the most significant diplomatic step since the start of the conflict. Under the agreement, both sides committed to a 72-hour truce, monitored by international observers stationed along Gaza's key crossings. Humanitarian provisions were expanded, allowing additional medical convoys and fuel shipments to enter daily through Rafah and Kerem Shalom. Qatar and Egypt have been credited for sustaining communication channels when direct contact between Israel and Hamas remained impossible. According to officials present at the talks, both mediators will play an ongoing role in verifying compliance with the ceasefire terms. Early reports from Gaza suggest a noticeable decline in airstrikes and shelling since the signing, though sporadic gunfire has been heard near Khan Yunis and Rafah. Multilateral participation adds credibility to the ceasefire but also complexity. The more hands on the agreement, the higher the risk of conflicting interpretations if violence flares again. Next news: ceasefire takes effect. As the agreement came into force, Gaza entered its first full day without airstrikes in months. For the first time, families ventured out of shelters, and aid convoys moved through newly reopened border crossings under UN supervision. According to humanitarian agencies, over 1,200 tons of food and medical supplies have been delivered since the truce began. Field hospitals are operating around the clock to treat the wounded, while power lines and water systems are slowly being restored. Despite the cautious optimism, reports of isolated skirmishes emerged in northern Gaza, where communication remains limited. Both sides accused each other of minor violations, but the overall ceasefire has held. Israel confirms partial withdrawal of its forces from Gaza City under deal. Meanwhile, international monitors continue to assess compliance, warning that any breakdown could quickly reignite hostilities. The ceasefire has brought a fragile calm, but peace built on exhaustion is rarely sustainable. True stability will depend on whether humanitarian relief can translate into political compromise. Next news: Gaza 2 years after the war. 2 years after the start of the Israel-Hamas war, field assessments reveal the full scale of Gaza's destruction. More than 60% of residential areas in northern Gaza have been leveled, and thousands of families remain displaced. The World Health Organization has warned of potential disease outbreaks caused by contaminated water and overcrowded shelters. Hospitals that survived the bombings continue to operate under severe shortages of fuel, medicine, and staff. UN officials estimate that nearly 300,000 people are still living in temporary camps with limited access to sanitation or electricity. Reconstruction efforts have been slow, with most international aid focused on emergency relief rather than long-term rebuilding. Economists in the region describe the current situation as a humanitarian trap, where dependency on aid replaces any prospect of self-sufficiency. Local volunteers and NGOs have begun small-scale rebuilding projects, but progress remains minimal. Gaza's crisis now extends far beyond military conflict. It is a test of whether the world can rebuild not. Next news: we come to Ukraine war escalation. In Eastern Europe, the war in Ukraine entered another intense phase this week, with over 200 clashes reported along the eastern and southern fronts within a single day. Russian forces have intensified attacks near Donetsk and Kharkiv, while Ukraine claims limited counteroffensives in the south. Military analysts describe the current situation as a war of attrition, where both sides are suffering heavy losses with little change in territorial control. Ukraine's defense ministry announced that several Russian armored units were destroyed near Avdiivka, though Moscow disputes the claim. Meanwhile, Russian artillery and drones continued to target logistics hubs and ammunition depots across eastern Ukraine. NATO officials warned of rising operational risks after reports suggested Belarus has provided logistical support to Russian troops stationed near the border. Western allies are expected to discuss further air defense and winter aid for Ukraine in the coming days. The Ukraine conflict has shifted from rapid offensives to endurance warfare, testing not only military capacity but political will. The question is no longer who gains ground, but who can endure the cost. Next news: massive strikes on Kyiv. Kyiv faced one of its most destructive nights this week as Russia launched a massive missile and drone assault on Ukraine's energy grid. Local authorities confirmed that dozens of power facilities were hit, plunging parts of the capital and surrounding regions into darkness. More than 270,000 residents temporarily lost electricity and heating, while emergency crews worked overnight to restore power. Ukrainian officials said the attack involved over 30 missiles and multiple waves of Iranian-made drones. Explosions were reported in Zaporizhia and Dnipro as well, suggesting a coordinated strike aimed at crippling Ukraine's winter infrastructure. President Volodymyr Zelensky vowed retaliation and urged Western allies to accelerate delivery of air defense systems. In response, the European Union announced a €1.2 billion emergency aid package to help Ukraine repair its power grid and maintain basic services through the winter. Russia's strategy of targeting energy infrastructure underscores a shift towards psychological warfare, using darkness and cold as weapons. Yet, amid the blackouts, Ukraine's resilience remains its strongest defense. And the final news of today: Nobel Peace Prize 2025. In Oslo, the 2025 Nobel Peace Prize was awarded to Venezuelan opposition leader María Corina Machado, recognizing her long-standing efforts to promote democracy and human rights in her country. The Nobel Committee described her as a symbol of peaceful resistance against authoritarianism. Machado's message, delivered via a live address from Caracas, was both emotional and defiant. She dedicated the prize to every Venezuelan who refuses to surrender their freedom and urged the international community to support democratic movements worldwide. The announcement ended weeks of speculation that former U.S. President Donald Trump could be honored for his mediation in the Gaza ceasefire process. Both Russian President Vladimir Putin and Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu reacted publicly, suggesting Trump deserved recognition for his peace initiatives. Reactions across Latin America were mixed. Some praised the committee's focus on civil liberties, while others criticized it for overlooking ongoing humanitarian crises. This year's Nobel decision highlights a broader truth: that peace is not only about ending wars, but about defending human rights within them. In a world defined by conflict, Machado's victory is a quiet reminder that moral courage remains a form of resistance. As this week draws to a close, the headlines from Gaza, Kyiv, and Oslo reveal one shared reality: peace remains fragile, but still possible. The coming weeks will test whether these fragile gains can last or fade under renewed pressure. Thank you for watching Newswire Daily, Global Conflict Weekly Recap. Stay informed, stay critical, and don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for our next world update.